The first slide is about, just to give you some background to the, agreement itself. Just a history, some history of it. It started way back in 1991, what we call the Abuja Declaration of the OAU. It took a while for it to get materialized, and again, as usual, it was Ghana that pushed for this to be materialized at the summit here in Accra in 2012, where a decision was taken to establish the free trade area, and it was endorsed. And from then, it took another 6 years for it to be, the agreement to be concluded in terms of the negotiations. And it's important, these numbers are important for us in Africa, because very often we sign agreements and they don't get implemented. There are many agreements that are still on the books, but this one, before the conference was over, 40 member states had already signed, and in another year, 22 members had already ratified. So this is a record for Africa, because this is the first time we've been able to move anything by way of agreement that quickly. So at a glance, this agreement basically is about trading. By the time we've gone through fully implemented, we will have only 3% of our tariff lines all across Africa sort of restricted, right? But this is over a period of 13 years, and that's very ambitious. I mean, if you follow trade agreements, we know that Europe, America, it takes a long time to conclude these agreements. So one of the things that I'll say very quickly is that, well, we should be patient, but committed, so that we don't beat ourselves too much if we, because trade agreements by nature are not things that we do in one day. But we are moving fairly quickly. So within 5 to 10 years, 90% of our tariff lines should be liberalized. At the moment, we are at what, 88? Yeah, the last, the meeting here in Accra, they agreed 88% so far, so right? Then in another, by 13 years time, we would have liberalized 7 additional tariff lines, which those are what we call sensitive goods. So the nation, state parties will determine what sensitive is and will negotiate on that. And then in the end, only 3% will be excluded. So there are things that we say, okay, water that is made from a fountain in my village is very special, and we will not liberalize water. So that will be one of those restricted goods. Now, the agreement allows, okay, we're doing this and taking everybody along. So we are not at the same level in terms of development. So the least developed countries can take a bit of time to do this. In Ghana, because we are in the ECOWAS zone with a number of the LDCs, we, in a way, are sort of riding on that. So we have 10 years to liberalize completely. It's not the same in other areas, so we have to take advantage of that. But basically, it's a 10-year process. And I like to use the example of somebody who is 10 years now, a young person who is 10 years now. So we have to think in terms of, by the time the person is 20 years, what will the trading regime look like? So whatever we're doing, essentially we're building and planning along with this 10-year-old young person, right? Now, we have done this. We've done trade in goods. Now there's the other part called the trade in services, which is just about starting now. I like to put this up, maybe it's difficult to read, but just to communicate the idea that the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is a framework agreement. So there are a number of different components. So we have the protocol on trade in goods, and there's a protocol in trade in services. I'm struggling to read here. And there are a number of things, rules on settlements, dispute settlements, competition policy, and then intellectual rights, right? So these are different stages. We've done the first one, trading goods. Right now it's about starting negotiations in trading services. I think they've already started talking. So there are a number of things that will be happening as we go along. But the basic principle is that we're not going to wait until everything is ready. We will, let me use my favorite expression, we'll build a ship as we sail. We'll fix the problems and learn how to navigate better. So that's the basic principle with which this is happening. So this is just to give you the sense that there are a number of things under the agreement. Tariff lines, rules of origin. I mean, there are things that you know already about as shippers and exporters. So these are all under. Now, the key thing about the AfCFTA is the fact that trading continues. The only thing that we are introducing will be the tariffs, preferential tariffs under the agreement, right? And then the procedures around it. But otherwise, it's the same kind of things that we are doing. And hopefully with the support of things like PAPs and other things associated, it makes it easier for us as Africans to trade with ourselves. So that if I want to buy plantains from Ivory Coast, I don't have to send money to London, it goes to Paris before it comes down to Ivory Coast, right? I'm losing something. Okay. So there are a number of operational instruments that have been set up to support the agreement. PAPs, as we heard, is one of the critical ones. Thank you. But in addition to this, there are a number of other things. There's a platform for tariff negotiations. There's what is called the Africa Trade Observatory, which is more about information, trade information across Africa. Of course, we've had a very elucidating representation on PAPs. There is a mechanism for dealing with non-tariff barriers, all the kinds of things. So basically, it's a complete management system that helps us to pick up what issues are coming up and a mechanism to deal with them. There's a mobile application. There is a facility to help, countries, there's going to be some loss in terms of liberalizing. So there's a facility that is to help that from Afrexim Bank. And then he talked about Mansa. The name Mansa is from Mansa Musa, so it's sort of an acronym. As a know your client facility is, if you like, one of the security features that is built into it, so that every trader is known to the system. And I think that's a very important component of the mechanism. So where are we? You know that the secretariat has been established in Ghana. So we are actually implementing. Ghana was one out of the 7 countries that put in a bid to host, and thanks to the good work of our leaders and those who supported us, we got it, which is good, because Ghana has been a champion on things Pan-African, but we've never hosted anything. So to become the commercial capital of Africa is, I guess, a good reward for all the work we've been doing, hoping that we can benefit, we can leverage the benefits that come from the fact that we are hosting the secretariat. We were supposed to start trading 1st July 2020, but then came something called COVID, so we put it off. Then in the meantime, we had a Secretary General who was appointed. And if you're familiar with the AU system, you know that is also one of the things that we can say we've done very well, very quickly, to get an agreement around who leads an organization. The Secretariat is commissioned, operating just somewhere down here, in a nice building called the Africa Trade House. Trading started 1st January last year, 2021. Now, we have to explain that that was an experimental trade to make sure that the systems would work. So Ghana worked with a number of countries to ensure that we could export some products. I think 2 companies from Ghana could export products under all the arrangements and the paperwork and everything, could work. It doesn't mean that everybody is ready in Africa to start trading. We have a national office. A few others have just set up. We have a national office operational now because it was part of the, if you like, the agreement to host, to set up an office that will support the secretariat. So, government has done very well to get this going quickly. Other countries are coming up, but we are, I would say, as usual, we are in the lead, and we would like to keep our lead. As of now, which is essentially last month, only 1 country in Africa is not signed up to the agreement, and 42 countries have ratified. Again, as I said, it's a huge record for us in Africa, because it doesn't happen that quickly to get agreements around doing things in common. So hopefully, out of these 42, a number of them will start getting ready to trade. So, for example, last month, the Minister for Trade and Industries was signing MOUs on bilateral basis with a number of countries, so that it's almost like coalition of the willing, let's use that phrase, where if countries are ready, you can sign up and start experimenting, getting the processes in place. So that was, if you like, the African stage. Let's come home to say, what have we done for ourselves? Well, how are we getting ready to get into trade on operational level? So one of the first things that have been done is to set up an institutional framework, of which the National Coordination Office is part. So the national coordination, and the emphasis is on coordination, because as you know, trade involves so many things. There are many organizations involved in this, including yourselves. So our office is essentially to coordinate, make things happen, push people, ask questions, find things, call people, so that things don't get blocked, and so we can benefit from this wonderful thing called the free trade area. We have put in place a national policy framework, which will be launched very soon. I would say, next month, early next month. there's been quite a bit of sensitization around it. We know we've not done, it's not everybody who has heard about it, it's not everybody who understands it, but some sensitization has been happening, like this one, right? We've done 2 national conferences, we've done regional conferences, 15 of them. We're going to have another national conference beginning of April, and thereafter we'll do another round of regional conferences, just to create awareness. And it's not just creating awareness. One of the things that is critical in all of this is this thing so-called rules of origin, because if we don't understand and are able to implement that, we won't fully benefit from this. So as we are creating general awareness, we are also learning about PAPS, about how it works, about how you can use more to do the transaction. So it's going to be an ongoing learning, practicing, and I like the comment he made in terms of the interactions, that as we interact, we pick up issues, comments, ideas to refine the system, because this is going to be, as I said, building the ship as we sail. We will keep refining the systems as we go along. At the moment, one of the things that we've done, and for us it's very important, and I guess for you too, that would be critical, because all this awareness and talking and the systems and things, the only way we measure success in the free trade business is actually people sending things across borders and making money from it, right? So one of the key things that we are doing at the national office is to work and support companies to apply all the protocols, all the procedures to trade in Africa. So what we are doing is that we've selected a number of companies through a very rigorous process. We've come down to what, 200, but it's not a closed process, where we are doing what we call company audits or assessments, which actually, with the questions that were being asked, will feed into the whole process of knowing your client, knowing the company, because we will be able to say, company X, we have visited, we have checked their processes, and they are registered to trade with us. So then PAPS and other banks will be happy that at least somebody can work with them. They know where this company it exists. What we're going to do with that is essentially, once we've identified real problems for each company. So we are not doing one size fits all, and that's why it's a little slow. We have teams right now visiting companies to say, actually we did, from the 200 or so, we've sent teams to do initial scoping to identify generally what the issues are: finance, equipment, training, raw materials, utilities, all kinds of 10 sort of categories of issues that we have. And now we are following up to try and, if you like, drill down to say, what exactly is the issue and how can it be helped? So like what he said, and some of the questions that were being asked, trade financing is one of the big ones. And then you say, okay, who is there to help you to solve that particular problem? That's the kind of thing that we're doing at this stage. As we said, we're working with 100 this year with the idea that we can sort of work with more stakeholders, more partners, so that gradually, more and more companies will be able to actually benefit from the Africa Free Trade Area region. So we put in this just to illustrate the, if you like, the schematic of how we are set up. There's an interministerial facilitation committee. There is a national steering committee that we met last week. And then, of course, there's our office. And then there's the technical working groups. So we had one technical working group focusing and preparing and supporting the implementation of the trade in goods protocol. Now we are constituting another working group on the trade in services, which is now coming up. So this is generally the framework within which we are gearing up to boost trading with Africa. That's what we call the whole framework. So these are the working groups that I was talking about. So 7 in trade policy, trade facilitation, trade-related infrastructure, enhancing productive capacity, which is a big one and very important one, because if we can't produce, we can't sell. If we can't produce competitively, we cannot sell competitively. So that's one of the areas. And then, of course, trade information, which 2 weeks ago I educated myself how big and serious it is. But, you know, it's one of the things that is receiving attention. And then trade finance and development finance, and then this integration factor matter, talking about movement of goods. Goods move with people. So it is one of the critical areas where free movement of people is one of the issues that we have a group on factor market integration. Now, the working group that I said will be inaugurated soon will be the communication, business services, financial services, tourism, communication. Now, as part of all this, there is, the digital trade, e-commerce components, which is already coming up very strongly and being addressed as part of the conversations. All right, so in doing this, and as I said, it's coordination. So what we've done is essentially to try and put some roles around which we work, to work with others, like the Shipping Authority, like the Standards Board, like the Food and Drugs Authority, all the stakeholders. Our work is to bring all these key players around the national policy to see where there are challenges. And one of the big things that we always emphasize is that the free trade agreement, if you like, is a new kid on the block. Before it came, there were several legislation and agreements on trade, right? So sometimes even the laws and the policies are not aligned. We know, for example, issues where people would say, okay, let's prevent others from dumping goods in the country, right? What is dumping? What are they dumping? These are some of the issues that have to be refined, so that if we are liberalizing 97% of our tariff lines, we have to go back to the laws so that ensure that the laws actually speak to the liberalization that we are talking about. And that is work that is part of this coordination work that we have to do. One of the key areas, as I said, is this working with companies, what we call the trade facilitation, market expansion program, to ensure that at the end of the day, it's not the number of meetings we've had or conferences, but actually to what extent people are able to trade, to what extent is it improving individual lives, and as a country, to what extent is our trade, international trade with Africa increasing. And of course, for Africa, going up from 16% to something higher gradually at some point, hopefully 70%. All right? And then, of course, one of the things we do is this kind of like this arrangement we have, this interaction we are having, where we work with different stakeholders to explain, hear concerns, and the best of the, use the appropriate channels to get a consensus to the appropriate authorities. Yes, and then of course, coordinate the the whole of the policy implementation. So this, if you like, is a sampler of the agencies that we are working with, we coordinate with, we call them key public sector partners. I'm always a little careful showing this because people start saying, okay, I'm not on it. This is a sample, but essentially, if you like, the key ones, they are national, what do you call them? National competent authorities, the terminology that is used. So there are some organizations that you work with, customs, with GIPA, with shipping authority, because as I said, you cannot trade without moving goods. So these are, if you like, the caucus, if you like, the inner caucus, but then we have a bigger platform of engagement with other organizations where essentially what we are doing is facilitating, making sure that we can trade, making sure that the challenges that people have, simple things like getting a certificate for a product that gets stuck somewhere for whatever reason, gets identified and facilitated. So there are a number of things that we are doing in that regards with other organizations for that simple purpose, to facilitate exporters. And remember, trading is not just export. So we always, I think a lot of the emphasis is on the export, also because I guess it comes from government looking for revenue from export, but we also import. And the AfCFTA allows us to import from Africa under the same regulations. So for example, if you produce something that you get input from abroad, somewhere else, and you could get the same from somewhere in Africa at a good price, assuming that it's easy to get it at a competitive, tariff-free and all this. That's what this conversation is about. So we can also Africa trading with itself is not just us exporting, but also buying what? Leather from Gambia or Senegal to make shoes in Ghana and then exporting to somewhere in Africa, or buying shea butter from Mali or Burkina Faso to produce here or refine here and export, somewhere to other parts of Africa. So it's in and out, right? And that is critical for us to understand what each of these agencies are doing, where we are overlapping. As I said, free trade agreement came much, much later when there were standards board already in place, there was this already in place. So the rules and regulations are not always talking to each other. Also, sometimes with the emphasis on revenue generation, I'm sure you know how much money you pay to either send or receive, things. Is it all necessary? Yeah, it is necessary for revenue generation, but does that contribute to boosting trade? If not, where can we make sure that we are making the right adjustments? So again, this is part of what we are trying to do by way of trying to harness and streamline things a little bit from our perspective. And we've already had engagement with a number of organizations, so some of these issues that we list here are coming from these conversations that we are having. And we are every day having conversations. There are different groups that we are meeting who are coming up with issues, and we're trying to see how to put all of this in the appropriate channels. And to help us to work on this, what we've tried to do is recommended that all of these organizations should come up with, if you like, a point person, a focal, one office, where if you have challenges with AfCFTA, because this organization is set up to do many things. Ghana Export Promotion Council is an agency that is, I said council, authority. That is to promote trade with everybody. But if you want issues dealing with Africa, we want to make sure that when you go, you are not going to be tossed around because your issue has about 3 different components, and you have to go to this office, go to that office, go to that office. We say, tell us who or one office where somebody comes, after, go to this office and your issues will be resolved. If they cannot even resolve it themselves, they can tell you, okay, we'll deal with this, come back in 2 weeks. So that is your one single point of interaction. So that is what this diagram is supposed to be for, where we have contact persons who are facilitating the interchanges. And we've tried to articulate some functions. You know, basically, if you set up an office, you should say what they do, give them terms of reference. So this is essentially some of the 2 ideas that we've picked up from our interactions with different stakeholders. Essentially, as focal points, support desks for issues that come up, as a liaison with us, as the, if you like, at the coordinating office. But of course, it doesn't take away the work they do with other agencies, right? But so that is, you know, we can streamline the way we communicate and work amongst ourselves. All right, so let me talk briefly about some of the practical things. So that was, if you like, the institutional arrangements that we have put in place. But now let's begin to talk about where the rubber hits the road. What I said earlier, we have this market expansion program where we're focusing on companies that, for now, that export, right? So for about a year now, we've been working on this project where we want to, in a way, increase the number of companies that can trade under the AfCFTA regime. Now, we recognize that some companies are already trading in, in Africa. I learned recently that Ghana's largest in Africa trading destination was Burkina Faso. I never knew that, but so there is something happening already. What this is about is to trade under the protocols and the procedures under AfCFTA to begin to take advantage of the preferential tariffs that we are building up. And we admit maybe for now it doesn't look big enough, but in 10 years it starts, or even next year it goes down a little bit more, another year it goes down a little bit more. So incrementally we'll be building this up. So we're focusing on these companies, identifying their problems that they say, this is our problem. Our problem is we need equipment, machinery. Well, what does that mean? Is it that you need money to buy? Is it you need spare parts? Is it you need, what is it about the machinery? So that's the kind of work we are doing to be able to say, oh, so you have equipment. It's just that you can't get spare parts. And it's not the spare parts, maybe getting money to buy the spare parts. So we are able to say, okay, it means this is a financial issue. If we get it resolved, we can get a machine working. So those are the kind of things that the teams are doing in the field. And to do this, we took an approach where to select them, we started from what, 18,000 transactions from shipments and screen it down. Yeah. So we have 3 categories of companies: those that are already exporting to Africa, those that export elsewhere, and those who we want to encourage to export. That's what we are, that's the group that we are working with. Now, this diagram, this slide just summarizes what we go through to sort of select and what we do with these companies. I'm sure this will be made available. Sometimes it's difficult to read these things when you project them. But for me, at the end of the day, we ask the question, so what? All this, so what? it comes down to opportunity, right? What we are talking about is a borderless market. So earlier on, we were talking about some boundaries, right? Now we're talking about going beyond the boundaries. We don't see them if we can trade. Even payments, we don't see them. So it creates this big market, 1.2 billion people, with a potential of $3.4 trillion, numbers that I can't, you can't think about. What does it mean for you as a shipper? By road, by ship, by air? What does it mean for you as a company, a manufacturer? How much of this money can you target? Instead of fighting to protect your market of what, 30 million, 38 million growing, but compare that to 1.2. So if you compare Ghana's size to Nigeria or to Ethiopia or to South Africa, would you protect the 30 or want to reach out to 80 million, 85 million, 200 million? That is what the conversation is about. And all that we are doing is to enable, build the capacities of stakeholders, of everybody, so that we can begin to look into this. As I said, a 10-year-old in 20 years, 10 years when a person is 20 years, should be able, a young person who understands computers, can sit in their room, create an app, which can be downloaded in Namibia, and thanks to PAPS, and maybe if we get the fintechs in it, can be earning money from 1.2 billion potential users. That is the kind of opportunity that we are talking about. Now, I put in this last slide because, just to preempt, because I know, these are questions we get. So there is a procedure for registering. I mean, you must be aware of, trading, exporting, and importing. So we put in these last two slides just to illustrate, to say that this is the procedure we go through, and if we need assistance, we are setting up teams to help to smooth the whole process so people can start actual trading. We hope, as we do these things, we are preparing, and this is the way I put it, we are preparing to trade, because even though officially the politicians, the AU people say we started trading, yes, but actual trade is not starting because we are not there yet. We haven't produced the goods, the tariffs are all not ready, countries are not ready to receive, but gradually we are building up so that when Nigeria is ready, we can start engaging. When Rwanda is ready, we can start. So this is what we're doing now, and as I said, at the same time, let's be kind to ourselves, not beat ourselves too much. We should be preparing rather than getting frustrated that we don't know anything, we haven't heard anything. Let's use the time to prepare ourselves so that when the doors open, we'll be ready. And for me, my last word is that I'm always thinking of that young person who is 10 years today. In 10 years, when the tariffs have come down to only 3%. It means the whole of Africa, you can sell anything other than those 3% anywhere. You can move anywhere. That in 10 years, this person at 20 years should be able to do that. And that's what I'm looking at as the opportunity for us. I mean, some of us, I say we are waiting for God now. All this is not for us. For the younger ones, for the people who are coming after us, that's what this opportunity is about. Thank you very much, and I'm open for questions.